And before I introduce Malcolm, as I said, if you want to grab a pen and paper, and I'm sure Malcolm endorses this, we know that he has a role with the Flatbush Jewish Community Coalition with all the things going on. And my list of items this week is endless. With everything going on, take the opportunity, certainly if you're in New York, but I think anybody can make this call. We'll ask Malcolm in a second. The FJCC is urging everybody to remember those influential members of Congress who did not cave in to the squad and squad-like representatives who were among those who voted for the amendment to eliminate $3.3 billion in U.S. security assistance to Israel. Those who voted against the resolution, who voted no, need to be thanked, including Representative Hakeem Jeffries and Representative Yvette Clarke. Their phone numbers are as follows. Representative Hakeem Jeffries, 202-225-5936, 202-225-5936, and Representative Yvette Clarke, 202-225-6231, 202-225-6231. Time for the weekly update. Malcolm Hoenlein with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Thank you. Good to be with you on this hazy day where Canada sent us another gift.
It is amazing. It is amazing. Malcolm, anybody, I mean, certainly any U.S. citizen or anybody who knows how to use a phone and contact Washington, anybody can make this call. I know you're encouraging, obviously, those who are in their districts to make the call and New Yorkers to do it, but really anybody could do it, right?
Absolutely, anybody can do it. It's more important when you can give your address and
right.
say you live in the district.
Right.
Look, these are not people who necessarily always vote with us on all things and positions, but it was a courageous act to go against these 103 Democrats, and you see some of the gutless wonders. Jack Smith is just really a case in point. He's the ranking Democratic on the Armed Forces Committee in the House, and he had said all along he was going to vote against it, and lo and behold, he voted for it. And he acknowledges, and this is really important, because if you want to understand the gutless wonders that sometimes serve in public policy positions, elected and unelected, and why the counter voices are so important. He voted for the amendment because of intimidation by leftists demonstrating in front of his house, burning the garbage, attacking, constantly harassing them in his home and beyond. And he admits that that's the reason, or in large part, that was the reason why he voted as he did, meaning that he gave in to the harassment and out of fear, that his family was being bombarded in this way. I understand it on a human level, but that's not how an elected official. You should get police protection. You should get other things if he is being intimidated in this way. And I think it's true of others. The members of the Black Caucus pointed out to me that the DSA people go against the positions of the Black Caucus more than 80% of the time. In the election of Esplanade, the blacks in Brooklyn and the Hispanics in the Bronx did not vote they voted for Esplanade. They didn't vote for the DSA candidate. And I think that we have to look at this more carefully and see that it was white liberals in most of these cases, and there 17% of the people who were eligible to vote voted. So and they don't get the majority of that vote. So you're talking about a small percentage of the people actually determined the outcome of the election. Right. And that's why we tell you every vote counts. Yeah. That's why you and I have been ranting on this. People, there's a perfect example that a vicious DSA candidate who led the demonstrations at Columbia University gets elected to Congress.
Yeah, and we're learning this lesson over and over and over. It's amazing. We're just learning this lesson constantly. I hope we're learning the lesson. We're being taught the lesson constantly.
Right.
By the way, just to clear up, I know it was a mistake. You said Jack Smith. I think you meant Adam Smith, right?
Adam Smith.
Yeah. So because Jack's also making headlines, but not for being a member of Congress. So Malcolm meant Adam Smith out in Washington. All right. So look, I mean, this is we basically have heard your analysis. Anything other to say about this? I mean, are you worried? I mean, I know you're worried about the future of the Democratic Party. You're also worried about this type, especially among the younger people, this type of policy or movement toward ending Israeli military aid happening in the Republican Party eventually as well. Any other comment about this vote this week?
Well, first of all, it's very disturbing because this would cut off aid. And not only that, but it influences others. And even some of those who did not vote for it issued statements that were disturbing. And, of course, demonizing Netanyahu wherever possible. And, they've made him the boogeyman for everything and anything that people can blame in the Middle East and beyond. And, of course, the major attack this week by the vice president, but the fact that 103 people would vote for this resolution and assume that they would not have to pay a price for it, or that the price they would pay for not voting for it would be greater, right, is tells you the level of intimidation that exists and the degradation on the extreme left of the Democratic Party, and the fact that only one Republican, the guy who introduced this and was being kicked out of Congress, in the last election, Thomas Massie, was the only Republican to vote for it. That doesn't mean that there isn't some weakening in some in the Republican Party, but they were disciplined and they stood up for it, and the public statements were very strong. So I think this is means we have a lot to do on both sides of the aisle, but particularly in Democrats. I don't believe that we should write them off. I think we have to try to help decent candidates who truly care about America, care about democracy, who care about freedom, who recognize that we have one Democratic ally in the region will get elected and that the majority in Congress remains as it has been for decades.
All right. In terms of the interview with the vice president, at what point did you say, okay, now he's gone too? Where was the point where he went the most too far? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was in your mind the most outrageous thing he said?
Good evening to Joe Rogan, and from there on, it appeared to be downhill.
Well, it was only about 20% of the interview on Israel, but what was it? Seriously, what was the worst that he said?
But he used every opportunity, and this is what people keep pointing out to me: every opportunity to blame Israel on conspiracy theories, on the fact that they mobilizing Americans against him and against his views on Iran. First of all, why wouldn't every country in the world is trying to advocate for the positions when it comes to life and death issues for them and for their security, let alone for economic and other reasons. There was no nefarious activity. This was a public effort. The fact that they hired this guy, which I actually opposed for this very reason, that and they did it publicly. There was no trying to hide it. They didn't avoid FARA registrations or other things, as many countries do. They didn't put hundreds of billions of dollars secretly buying off people, buying into the universities like the Qataris do, the Chinese do, others do. The Saudis did it for a long time, and certainly Turkey and others are involved in all sorts of nefarious activities here. Israel does not. The Mossad does not operate in the United States. It's a long-standing policy and position. And besides, the intelligence units of both countries, the organizations work together so closely, and Israel shares its intelligence with the United States most often with Israel. And I think the outreach to paint Israel as he did, and to say that he was the victim of this. Israel has not said one thing against J.D. Vance that I know of, and the Prime Minister and President of Israel have gone out of their way always to praise both the President and mention the Vice President in most cases, or many cases. But this is part of the process of demonization. This is straight out of the Tucker Carlson School of Politics and Journalism. So you distort, but you give yourself a little wiggle room. there seemed to be a lot of anger in what he had to say and the way he said it. And for many Americans, that's what they will pick up. And nobody's listening to a 3-hour interview, I don't think. And, but they only had to be in for any of the segments where he goes after Israel.
Right. And that's the headline. That's the headline. The vice president went after Israel. That's and that's, as you just said.
It's inevitable. Right. It's the man bites dog story. And that's what they knew full well, that this was going to get the coverage. It's not something that was haphazard. You don't agree to a 3-hour interview, and the White House, there were people, Tom Cotton, many others who have come out and said and debunked this idea that there was a conspiracy and that they were trying to change the rule. Did they come out again? Did they not like the MOU? They didn't make it a secret. Right. It was the public policy to say that they didn't like it. And a lot of Americans, a lot of members of Congress, and not even supporters of Israel, didn't like it because they know the threat that Iran represents.
It's now July. A year from now, there'll be debates already, primary debates a year from now in 2027. For the 2028 election.
There could be. It depends if you have
the summer of 2015, I think it was dominated by Republican Party debates because there was unless Trump figures out a way to run again.
Exactly what I was implying.
Is it possible?
No.
Is it possible? No, it's not possible, especially not. I can't imagine at his age even make the effort to try to, to put into.
Would he like to? I'm sure he would like to. Are there people who would like to see it happen? Yes, I'm sure there are people who would like to see it happen. Is it possible under the law? I do not think they can amend the Constitution. First of all, it's a very long process. And second of all, I think he acknowledges and says, often makes reference to leaving and doesn't anymore talk about, third term. The law is very explicit about it. And so I don't believe. I think, and I would be very unfortunate if we go into a coronation process where, there's one candidate and they don't have somebody else. I think the debates and things are actually useful for the parties, even if they
and necessary this time
negative
around.
Response. And this time, essential. And I hope on the Democratic side, there will be, but you're going to see DSA affiliated or DSA linked candidates who will be running. I have no doubt about that. And it's going to be very open field because you don't have an incumbent to take over. And I'm sure there are a lot. You see already people, former candidates and current candidates who will run. And by the way, it reminds me just that one of the saddest things I saw was that Nancy Pelosi was one of the 103.
Right.
I mean, you talk about the degradation of people and how they collapse. And then, of course, they just used to say, well, I love Israel or I'm for Israel, but I'm against Netanyahu, what he's doing.
Yeah, but
they can't cite what they've done.
Pelosi would have been smart if she would have said, who's on my side? The Prime Minister of Israel, because, he's been calling for no more reliance on American aid. He even introduced some type of 10-year process or whatever it was. So, it's funny that none of them cited the Prime Minister himself in heading in this direction.
That there actually there are meetings going on. There are people working on that.
Yeah, they have to be.
Who, for Israel and the United States, working together to. Netanyahu was supposed to be a 10-year phase out. The original deal ends in 2 years.
Has that been reduced to 10 months? Are they desperate now to get it into motion?
No, and there were a lot of people in Israel and here who thought it was not a good idea to phase out, especially when Israel needs it so much now, given the threats and the amount of money and the economic implications for them, and that the support in Congress was there to continue it. And there won't be any applause. You see, people aren't standing up and saying, "Oh, right. Netanyahu, great thing that you did." On the American side, they're not buying friends. The friends will support us. And in that regard, again, the loss of Lindsey Graham is so massive. It's going to make such a difference. We had so few voices like that. I saw him in Israel many times. I sat with him at a conference here in Washington not that long ago. He had a great sense of humor. He was so sincerely devoted to Israel. There was no ulterior motive. It didn't, it wasn't because of his constituents. It's because of what he really believed. And And I'm telling you that he's one of those rare individuals whose real contribution and importance will only come about after his death, when people realize the void he left and the role that he played. They say when a king dies, his influence ends. When a Navi dies, a prophet dies, it only begins and magnifies. I think with Graham's role will become much more evident to people. And his support for Israel and what he did. Nobody went as often. Nobody had a relationship with Netanyahu or with the people of Israel, all out of sincerity. And he'll be missed a lot.
Was he pro-Israel from day one?
As far as I remember, he was pro-Israel from day one. Don't forget, he was there for a long time. And so I can't say that I remember every vote, but yes, he was. It was something he believed deeply, and he grew up, as they said, believing those who bless Israel will be blessed. And he comes out of that tradition in South Carolina. And
do you suspect any foul play because of where he was hours before he passed away?
I, for one, do not. In this case, you see that there were hereditary aspects to what he had, and his father had it, and that if they had not done the autopsy, maybe, but it seemed to be so conclusive that the president made clear that the cause was not some sort of intervention, at least as far as we can tell.
By the way, on the president thing, there's someone suggesting, a la what the universities do, maybe we could promote him from president to chancellor, and then put in a regular elected president, next time around. Make him chancellor.
I don't know that titles like chancellor sit so well with our community right now. We've seen countries with chancellors that didn't help us.
I was thinking more on the university level. Okay,
I know what you were thinking, and if you would suggest king, maybe that would sell better for him.
I'll tell you, this shows you how far we are from World War II. That my first inclination was university and not European leadership. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listener-sponsored digital radio. Round the world, at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, in the beloved NSN app. It's interesting because this whole issue with the military aid to Israel, I wonder if they'll, when a Jewish organization, you've seen this a million times, when a Jewish organization loses their biggest donor or one of their large donors, they'll go to other donors and say, we've just lost one of our greatest sources of revenue, of income for our cause. We need you to step up. If, in fact, the United States pulls away its financial aid, I would assume the Prime Minister of Israel is going to have to go to some of those, Israel-loving, wealthy people around the world, especially the United States, and say, look, you got to step up. We need $500 million. Could you help us out? And there are, and I'm not kidding, Malcolm, there are people who could fill that void if necessary.
Well, there are some of them, big names, who have stepped up remarkably to contribute for various causes. Military arms is not where private citizens contribute. But investing in Israel, doing high tech, giving money to Zion Kum, give $200 million to Shaare Zedek. Other people have really stepped up to the plate in remarkable ways, some publicly, some privately, whether it could be anything from the excavations at Ir David and the Kotel Maravi, the amazing work being done there.
Right, and the army, the soldiers, all the different causes for the soldiers and stuff.
And, if they're legitimate, which people should always check.
Right.
And there aren't needs and necessities, and there are people doing amazing things every night, going out, feeding, working, bringing food, bringing warm clothing, and when they're in the mountains, there's stuff. I was with them. I saw it firsthand. That was not manufactured. And so those are plain people. Those are often Amcha, regular contributors, people who care about Israel, love Israel, Jews and non-Jews, by the way. And I saw it at the Kufay conference last week. Right. The amazing levels of support, the intensity of feeling, the love is so. And there were a lot of Jews there. There were over 300 Jews came, most of them religious Jews. They had a minyan for Shacharis, Mincha, and Marav every day. They had glad kosher food for the Jews there. And to see the interaction between these people come from all 50 states, and the Jewish representatives who was there. It was really an amazing thing to behold, and to see the intensity of feeling, which I think we have a lot to learn from it. And I think those Jews who came left better Jews, more ready to stand up and make their voices heard as they saw the others doing there. So we can draw inspiration from.
Yeah, I'm glad you just brought this up, because honestly, when many people, when they hear the vice president with the comments that you alluded to, what you mentioned, when they see what's going on, the vote in the United States House, et cetera, people start to get depressed. And they have to be reminded, as you just said, the way you described that conference, that those who love Israel, Jew and non-Jew alike, are not going down without a fight. Those who love Israel are not going to allow, and that's why I'm not even kidding when I say about, financial support from diaspora and other places in the millions and billions of dollars. There are people who care enough to step up and step forward. And obviously you spent a lot of time with them, with that group over the last week. By the way, total side note, but yeah, I need your comment because you basically predicted this. Did you see how much tax revenue New York City lost because of the exodus from New York in light of the new administration? I mean, it's literally over $10 billion.
Yeah, and some of that was in the works before this administration, but it was certainly expedited and intensified. And if this is only the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to see, I don't know anybody who doesn't have in the back of their mind the thought that this is becoming impossible. When you see every day the measures, every day the statements, he can smile all he wants. I think I mentioned on the show, and I don't remember, but that at that Kufai conference, I met with a group of the student leaders. They actually waited after my speech and anticipated, but I sat down with them, and it lasted a very long time. They're really amazing young people. And one of them said, because I told him that I don't mention the mayor's name, because he wants us to attack him. He wants us to publicize it. He wants us to use him as a foil, because that's how he builds up his constituency, and knows that too much of the media goes along with it and loves to highlight that and portray the struggle between us and him. And so I don't mention his name. And she said to me, you should call him the Grand Mufti of New York. Right. I think this 18-year-old gets it better than 90% of the people. That was really brilliant. And Grand Mufti also has implications for those who remember the history of Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, etc. Yep. But it's incredible that people can see the city go down the tubes. People want New York to survive. They want it to thrive. But if they keep harassing the real estate industry, they keep harassing every sector of New York, and maybe because, as many analysts say, maybe they does want to destroy it so that they rebuild and take control of it and they pick up the pieces. The pieces aren't going to be worth anything after the kind of policies and the standards that they are setting. And he never apologizes. And now we have the issue come up that Netanyahu is coming at least for the UN General Assembly. He wants to come before, but then to Washington, not New York, for the funeral of Senator Graham and to meet the president. But that is not set yet. But he says he's coming to New York no matter what for the UN, and that really sets up conflict, not so much with him, but between the federal government and the and New York State. And I cannot envisage the NYPD members even making an effort to arrest him. They will not do it, and no matter what the orders are. And I don't think he has any other forces to do it. But he stepped into it. He doubled down all the time about how he would arrest him. Now you see that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, that brought the charges against him and is collapsing. They had the chief prosecutor who was leading this case is out, and he's been charged with harassment or pending charges and multiple incidents against him. So the International Court, the ICC, even though I think they were at the ICJ, it doesn't matter really, because it's all the same horrible establishment of anti-Israel bias, anti-Jewish bias, and we have to remember that this translates. Then we're reading the stories. I hope people are reading about what's happening in the medical field. I mentioned it here a year ago when we had the first real studies done that 70% of people in medical professions said they've experienced anti-Semitism. Now you see the systemic anti-Semitism in hospitals in Australia, for instance, where people have admitted that they treated Jewish patients badly. And then you see pictures of in England, of what was done to women giving birth to others, terrible things that you can't go to a hospital in confidence if you're known to be Jewish. I mean, this is, we created Jewish hospitals, 100 years ago or more, 150 years ago, because Jewish doctors were excluded from the main hospitals and needed to create their own facilities. We're back to that again. It's horrendous, and that's the field that's supposed to be sensitive. They take the Hippocratic Oath. They swear their allegiance, to being not to be biased and to practice the thing with honesty and integrity. And yet you see that it's not true, and that people are admitting that they harassed Jewish patients, and people were afraid to say anything, because when you're a patient in a hospital and you say something, the circumstances could get a lot worse.
Remember when the activists would say years ago, who needs Jewish hospitals? Put our money somewhere else.
Right.
Now you know what? Now you know we're alone.
But those hospitals are not Jewish anymore.
I get that, but I'm saying now you understand the intention. And, of course, now we feel in so many areas of life just alone. It's amazing how we've never experienced this amount of luxury, this amount of freedom, and nonetheless, it's unbelievable how we are meant to feel and what many people, and many Jewish people in so many industries are going through. By the way, on the visit, you believe any of these rumors that the president doesn't want to see Netanyahu because of his reaction to the turkey sale?
Well, first of all, Netanyahu is a lot of company in the reaction to the turkey sale. This glorification of Erdogan is ridiculous, and the failure to recognize that we have a mirror image of what was done on the Sunni side by Iran is being done by Turkey. On the Shiite side by Iran is being done on the Sunni side by Turkey, together working with Qatar, with Egypt, trying to second Egypt. They've done joint military exercises. They're also, you see, trying to take over Syria and dominate Syria. Unfortunately, there are even American officials who helping and abetting this process. The glorification of Jolani, the head of the government in Syria. This is, again, a subject of a whole program in and of itself. But what we're seeing there is horrific. The people inside the country, whether any of the minority groups, the Druze, the Kurds, the Christians, and all of them with whom I'm in touch regularly are apoplectic about this. And they see the danger, and every once in a while something good. They picked up a shipment that was coming from Iraq going via Syria to the Lebanon, to Hezbollah, and they stopped it, and that is acknowledged. But the overall, wishful thinking that somehow Shara has proven that he's not just a terrorist in a suit, that he's really changed, is yet to be proven. And we have too many people who are compromised and compromising on this. On these issues, and it's the future. It's the long term. This is not going to end. Let's say even if Iran gets resolved, it's still going to have the challenge with Turkey, which has a powerful air force, and trying to buy the F-35s, and why it is objected to, and now Israel's has sort of modified the opposition from totally against the sale, which I think they remain, but talking about at least a modified version of the F-35. So if the president's upset about that, I mean, that's the prime minister's responsibility. It's Israel's responsibility, because it's not talking about a hypothetical. You have a guy who's every day saying he wants to destroy Israel and he's going to kill Netanyahu and that he's going to, bomb and eradicate Israeli influence in Israel.
And who joined?
I have met with him many times. I take him seriously, not because he can go about implementing some of this, but he's building an Islamist state in Turkey. It's a powerful state like Iran, with 90 million people, I think, and a member of NATO with an existent huge air force, and getting the F-35s would change the balance of power in the Middle East.
I need an example, just because people ask me who joined Netanyahu in being against the sale. Like, which major leader around the world?
Well, there were members of Congress who are opposed and have opposed it. And it's I believe that there may even be a majority not to support the sale. And in Europe, everybody's afraid of Turkey. Why? They say, you know, if Erdogan gets a cold, Germany gets pneumonia, because you have millions of workers there, the guest workers who were brought there, who now have expanded. The number keeps growing geometrically, and the government of Germany there's whole segments where they don't have control, where the young people of the people who came, who were still in the Ataturk tradition and, were not radical Islamists, their grandchildren are, and they don't talk to the grandparents. I've met with them. I've met with the families of these workers in Germany years ago already, because we saw this as a budding problem. And if you remember, the prime minister then, she opened up the country and said, we're bringing 1 million new refugees because they don't have children and they need workers, but realize that she's undermining the country, undermining security country, and now you see it manifest in all the attacks that go on, the crimes, the anti-Semitic attacks that are happening there, as well as in England and France and elsewhere. And in all these places, the birth rates are not replacement. They're not. They don't have young people to work. So on the one hand, they're looking to exploit the opportunities to get workers. And China is the same problem. They have a birth rate of like 1.1, which is nothing. I mean, it means an automatic decrease in population. So they don't have workers, and they don't have young people who are going to support the older people who are on pensions and stuff. So they face really serious economic problems as well. But the birth rate in Manhattan, I'm told, is 1.4, which is really another expression of why they get attracted to vote the way they do. And I think it's because they buying into the radical ideologies and don't have a vision of life. And we have to do more to reach out to the people who are being sucked into these movements, and to bring them back to the community, to our community, to other communities. And as I said to you before, when the Black Caucus doesn't support the DSA, they didn't vote for their candidates. Blacks didn't vote for them. Hispanics don't want them. Many of them know what it means to live under socialist states in South America and elsewhere. So we just have to have a more enlightened approach.
Wow. It all comes down to family and community. It all comes down to that. It's amazing. Was Congressman Khanna of California detained at gunpoint by Israeli settlers while he was attempting to enter Arab territory?
I mean, I would joke that maybe he should have been, but it was. Roka Khanna was a guy who kept telling us that he was a moderate and saying, in public statements, and clearly he has joined the DSA branch of the Democratic Party. He wants to run for president. He's a guy who has hundreds of millions of dollars. His wife was an heiress. And this was all a setup. They didn't clear it with the embassy. I think just look at the statements of Ambassador Huckabee, and it debunks what he had to say. Second, that there's no evidence of any of the things that he said being true. They didn't harass him. He was in a military zone. They stopped him to ask what he was doing and who he was, and they did not give advance notice that they were coming. And so this was a setup. I mean, it's very clear. And I think... Khanna has sort of faded out on this accusation. I'm sure he'll resurrect it later, but used it as a platform to carry out an attack when clearly nobody harassed him, nobody detained him, and nobody arrested him.
And finally, I've got to give you an opportunity to talk about Iran. Oil prices are going back up. It seems that the straits are, at least according to today's Times, the straits are again heading toward almost complete closure, and the U.S. is hitting targets every night. Did it happen last night again? Did the U.S. hit targets last night?
Yep.
So what's the strategy here? Is this what's going to happen over the next few nights? And does the United States think that Iran's going to be influenced by all this activity?
Well, Iran has to be influenced by it because it's certainly affecting everything that they do. But they also play the calendar game. They're looking at the elections in Israel and then more importantly in the United States. And they are taking decisions which are irrational for them. They continue to attack their allies like Qatar. They hit Gulf states. They're neutral like Bahrain and UAE, turning them into enemy states of it. And they pray that Israel would be in a position to take them out. Israel is staying on the sideline, which is the right policy. And Iran, as you notice, does not want to engage Israel in this. They fired on Jordan repeatedly. Then the night before last, I think there were 8 missiles and several drones shot at Israel, let alone the number at UAE, which I think is the biggest each time, but also Kuwait, which has done nothing and has been anti-Iran. So what's happening in the Straits, obviously they want to create the pressure, but the pressure is both ways. One, on Iran, when losing the income and blocking their ports really does have a big impact, and I congratulate the president for doing that and salute the troops who are involved and pray for their safety. Whether we'll have boots on the ground, I think is something we will have to see, whether it's really essential. But I think right now we got to mow the lawn more. We have to take out more of their capacity, all the radar, the naval radar in particular that was being taken out, and there are so many of these installations as well as storage facilities for rockets, for other things that they have. It looks like they're not being able to shoot really high quality missiles anymore, they're low on them. And even though it's been remarkable how much they actually had and continue to be able to fire, but hopefully they will not fire on Israel. Hopefully they will, we will be able to eliminate their capacity to do it, and that the people will eventually find a way, be given a way that they can take back the country and get rid of the mullahs and the regime that is willing to pay any price for the people. And this is a very tenuous situation, and it can go almost any way, any day in breaking out.
And they don't attack Israel more because they're more afraid of Israel's retaliation than what the United States is doing to them. Would that be accurate?
That's what the general consensus is that they know that Netanyahu is just waiting, that as he said, they're locked and loaded, and that the U.S. and CENTCOM has been amazing. They're very supportive. They've really engaged in all of these activities, and we'll have to see, and it's a shame because it obscures some of the things like the border peace. The Moroccan soldiers, other soldiers started to arrive to serve in Gaza. That we see Hamas moving the center of its activities to Turkey, which has not come under, except for a couple cases, any Iranian fire. There are a lot of subsets of things that are going on. But, we have to strengthen the sense of confidence that we have. Less than a third of Jews feel safe as a Jew living in and another third that feel unsafe, and 30% who haven't made a decision, whether they're safe or not. But a lot of people are not ready to admit it or to acknowledge it. So the answer is not fear. The answer is not intimidation. It's to be stronger, to go out, as you said, to write to the members of Congress who voted the right way, Democrats who voted against this amendment, and thank Republicans also, that we have to acknowledge them, invite them. There are going to be recesses now for Congress, bring them into the communities and make them speak about what they're going to do in the new session to help turn around this anti-Israel landslide that continues to go, and we have to work to expand the cooperation during this time quietly, which is very difficult for Israelis, but with everybody from Kazakhstan, Somaliland, Sudan, and anybody that wants to, that we build relations with them. Anybody, by the way, and reporting anti-Semitic incidents is really critical. We see even in the leaders of PEN, the authors organization, find a de facto ban on Jewish material that's not explicitly anti-Israel. Now, you're talking about one of the most important intellectual organizations and influencers and yet it doesn't make headlines and it doesn't get the story. There were victories at the NEA, by the way, this past week, and I credit the Jewish organizations. The conference helped coordinate amongst them, that they really had a concerted effort, and the NT's resolutions did not pass, did not get voted on, or didn't pass. And that's what we have to do, much more clever, concerted, and effective efforts.
I will end with a question which I bet you have not been asked this week. Are we obligated to root for Argentina this Sunday?
100%. Yes, and Argentina's Milei, the president, has been amazing and unabashedly so. And I think we certainly want to see them be able to go back and strengthen position, because in these countries, as much as now soccer seems to have taken on some life here, it's an obsession amongst people in South America, and I think it'll be a buoyant thing. And even if they lose, the fact is that they played amazingly and are going to be number two. One of them will be number one, and one will be number two, and then if France and England, the two losers in England, have to play off to be who will be number three.
Right. Well, thanks for explaining the way this works, because I've only watched the World Cup for about a minute, so this does help. This tutorial was
that's about 45 seconds longer than me.
This tutorial was very, very helpful. Have an easy fast, etc. Erev Shabbos Nachamu. Next week we plan on speaking. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, have a good Shabbos, and people, whatever we said, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, that's the bottom line. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us Nachama. We'll do the right things, and we stand up and do our part. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do his part, and we'll come out of this great.
Mourn properly, and as you just said, we will be comforted properly. And that's a really important message. Thank you, Malcolm. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, with the weekly update, a weekly tradition here, I'm proud to say, at JM in the AM.